Alright, welcome to another episode of the Cassels Cast. My name's Eamon Cassels. Joining me today is going to be Chris Kline of Fansided. We're going to do some early 2026 draft talk with the college season almost upon us. And then we're going to close out by talking about his Philadelphia 76ers because they've truly been one of the best stories of the league so far. Before we do that, I want to give like a quick monologue. I'll probably be doing this every episode. I did it last week. I thought it went pretty well. So yeah, we're going to be talking about just a team, something I've noticed throughout the week. And this time it's going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. I promise it's not going to be Wolves Celtics every single time. I'm going to try to mix in some more teams. But I do think the Timberwolves have been one of the more interesting teams to start the season, and I have a lot of thoughts to share about them, as you would expect from someone who covers the team. Yeah, so Anthony Edwards goes down with a hamstring injury on Sunday. It's announced the next day that he's going to miss 2 weeks. Obviously, a really tough blow for a Timberwolves team that even in the first 3 games with Edwards didn't look all that great. They had that Friday game against the Lakers where Luka dropped 49. The defense was in shambles. The Timberwolves overall looked really bad. One bad game, they can obviously make up from that, but losing Edwards for 2 weeks is a really tough blow. They play the Nuggets and the Lakers this past week, and man, it didn't look good. The Nuggets loss was a little bit understandable to me. It's like, hey, you're playing against the Nuggets. They have Nikola Jokic. They have an improved supporting cast around him. Obviously, the Wolves have had a lot of success against the Nuggets in recent years, but I wasn't expecting them to win that game, and I don't really think anybody else was. With that being said, they were up by like 10 points at halftime, and then, yeah, they kind of came apart at the end, but really and truly not all that shocking. The defense, though, really didn't look great, and we'll get to that a little bit more, but Wednesday they followed that up against the Los Angeles Lakers, who don't have not only LeBron James, but they don't have Luka Doncic. Not only that, they don't have like Gabe Vincent, Marcus Smart. So they're missing a lot of key rotational players. Obviously, the loss of Edwards is big for the Timberwolves. At the same time, I feel like this was a game most people were expecting the Timberwolves to win, and boy, did they not. It was really rough. Most of the game they were down, and they come back in the fourth quarter. Really, really, really nice fourth quarter from Jaden, from Julius. Really, really good game. And they're just not able to close it. I thought the fourth quarter was encouraging, but the first 3 quarters were truly awful. Defense, again, didn't look great. The offense, really, outside of Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels, they're just not getting a lot of production outside of those two guys with Edwards injured, and that's just not a recipe for success. There's a lot to be concerned about with this Timberwolves team early on. Once Edwards gets back in the mix, I think a lot of that's going to be solved. At the same time, I predicted them to be a 4 seed headed into the season. I don't feel as great about that, given how poorly they've played to start the year and how great some of the other teams have played. At the same time, it's 5 games into the season. I don't want to overreact. I still think this is a playoff team. I just don't know if they're as close to title contention as I thought they were heading into the year. I mean, the big point of discussion with everyone with the Timberwolves right now is the point guard room. Yeah, I mean, it's rough. You have a 38-year-old Mike Conley. He's declining once again. I will say the game against the Lakers, I can't put this on Conley or really the point guard room in general. I thought Conley had a really nice game. He was active defensively. I think he had like 4 stocks. He had like 8 points. I mean, at this stage of his career, if you get like 8, 10 points out of Mike Conley, I think that's a really good Mike Conley night. He was making the right plays as a passer. I feel like that's always still there. His IQ always jumps off the charts. It's just like he can't create for himself at the same level. And even that game, he wasn't really creating for himself. He was just, playing within the offense and getting some open shots, which is still good. It's just, I think, a big weakness when your point guard can't create for himself. Right now, without Edwards, he's starting. When Edwards is back, he's in that reserve role, getting more so like 15 or so minutes a game. I think at this stage of his career, he's like a clear backup, lower minutes guy, like anything more than 20 is probably a lot. But then again, with Edwards out, they have to count on him a little bit more. The Lakers game, it wasn't terrible. And then the other 2 point guards, Rob Dillingham is obviously the big point of discussion here. He has had a rough start to the season, frankly, because he really hasn't been able to get on the court much. Gets a DNP in the first game against Portland, checks in the late game against the Lakers on Friday night when they're down pretty big. 30 seconds into it, he breaks his nose. And then he's not able to play against the Pacers. Is able to play against the Lakers again on Wednesday. And I thought he played really well in those 12 minutes. I thought he was distributing the ball at a really, really high level. He was making the right reads. I feel like he's always been a gifted passer. It's just can he organize an offense as this like 20-year-old smaller guard who can be, let's be honest, a little bit trigger happy as a shooter. He's more so a scorer than a playmaker. And Finch is trying to get him into this role of being that like lead distributor. Chris Finch has always said his role with this team is going to be get to the paint, create for your teammates. And guess what? He did that really, really well against the Lakers. He had a really, really nice game, and I was impressed with what I saw. He didn't shoot particularly well in the first stint, but then he bounced back. He hit some nice shots, and he ended up shooting 50% from the field. I don't think you could ask for more from Dillingham in the 12 minutes or 16 minutes that he did receive. My apologies. 8 points, 5 assists, 4 of 8 shooting. I thought it was a really nice game. Obviously, he's like 6'1", 170, so he's going to get picked apart on defense. And we saw that a little bit in this game. I mean, he especially late in the game, the Lakers were just targeting him relentlessly, and it resulted in him getting 4 fouls, and ultimately, with the foul trouble, and with the Wolves trying to win this game, they weren't going to play Dillingham down the stretch, and I think that's fine. But if you can work him into the rotation a little bit throughout these first 3 quarters, I think that's just going to benefit his development and the team because they need a guy like Dillingham. And I'd like to see a little bit more of him, especially in these next 6 or so games without Edwards. I think that's going to be huge for this team. So I feel like that's something everyone's kind of looking at. And I mean, if he can't play a consistent role without Edwards, it's going to be a little concerning. You can always sort of blame the coach, but at the same time, hey, I'm not around these guys every day, and I have to trust the judgment of a coach who's just led the team to back-to-back conference finals appearances, right? I mean, maybe I'm in the minority there, but I think that sounds kind of logical to me, even though I am very high on Dillingham, and I think he can play a real role with this team, assuming he gets the opportunities. But yeah, the next 6 games are going to be very big for him. This Lakers matchup was very, very advantageous for him just because they don't have a great perimeter defense. They don't have a ton of size. I mean, I feel like that was the big reason he couldn't play against Portland. They just have so much size. They were pressuring defensively. And I mean, this year, big picture, in the playoffs, I don't know if Dillingham is going to be a guy who can play big minutes just because of the nature of playoff basketball and the size and length of so many of these teams. At the same time, get him into the regular season, see what you got, and then maybe you can end up playing him in the playoffs for a team that desperately needs some extra perimeter shot creation. I think it just makes too much sense. Then you got Bones Hyland, who's been a very interesting player. I was not expecting him to have this significant of a role on the Wolves. I thought he was sort of a guy to round out the roster, but he's been really, really solid, actually. I've been kind of impressed. He does have some moments where it's like, that's probably not the shot there, but he's fearless, and I mean, if you need some extra scoring, you need a little punch, I think he's kind of perfect. He's been a real part of this rotation. He's played real minutes in every single game. Against the Lakers, I think that was probably my favorite Highland game. He ended up getting 8 points in 8 minutes, and to close out the third quarter, they really needed a spark, and on the last 3 plays they scored, he scored or assisted on every single play. He had threes in that stretch, and then he had a really nice assist to Jaden McDaniels, I believe. So yeah, really solid stint there for Hyland. I think he's just like an energy guy that you probably can't play him too much or too consistently because some nights he just doesn't have it. He's just, a bit of a microwave scorer. I think that's a nice addition to this Timberwolves team, and they're probably going to go to him fairly regularly, especially if these first 5 games mean anything. But yeah, again, not like a total needle mover. And when you look at this point guard room overall, you have an energy scorer in Hyland who's been nice in his moments, an aging playmaking guard in Conley, and then a guy in Dillingham who you really don't know what you have because he hasn't been able to get on the court that much. So it's a big, big question mark. I think the real story for me, though, has just been this defense because that's one thing I always counted on with this Timberwolves team. I mean, they were the number 1 defense 2 years ago. They were the number 6 defense last year, and 5-game sample size. But hey, they're the 24th ranked defense so far. So obviously not great, and it is very concerning. I think Jalen Clark's absence. I mean, obviously you got to talk about Edwards. He's the superstar. The last 2 games, though, Jalen Clark's absence has really been felt, and they haven't been able to guard the point of attack that well. Jaden McDaniels, phenomenal defender. I just think he's being overtaxed a little bit. They're having him, be their sole point of attack defender without Edwards and without Clark these past few games. Hasn't totally worked well. I mean, especially against the Nuggets, that was tough. He looked a lot better against the Lakers. I mean, regardless, he's an awesome defender. I think you just need to, give guys different looks. I'm a big believer in that. And I also think McDaniels could play a little bit more off the ball. He's averaging over 3 stocks a game. So he's, I mean, truly incredible as an off ball guy. And I think you're not totally taking advantage of his skill set if you're just using him as that like point of attack perimeter defender type guy. I think he can be that. He's going to be, when Edwards is healthy, he's going to take on a lot of duties. It's just not having another guy that you can switch on to a perimeter guy just to give them different looks has really hurt this team. And then, yeah, I mean, outside of that, when you have Mike Conley, who's a smaller guard, he's aging. He did have some nice defensive moments against the Lakers, but overall, he's a defensive target at this stage of his career. I think that's a problem. DiVincenzo's defense has not looked good at all. It's been really, really bad. And then Rudy Gobert, I think he's another guy that it's worth having a conversation about. Defensively, the impact has still been there for the most part, and the on-off numbers are still genuinely insane. When he's on the court, this Timberwolves team actually has the 11th ranked defense, which is really good. However, when he's off the court, they quite literally have the worst defense in the league, which is just an insane on-off swing for a guy who's 33, and they're very dependent on his rim protection. The combination of Julius Randle and Naz Reid, two great individual players in their own right, they just don't have a guy to anchor the defense, especially when you have to use McDaniels on the ball. And I think that's been a big problem for this team, and it kind of explains why they're the 24th ranked defense, despite having a lot of defensive talent, especially when you consider the Edwards injury and the Clark injury, because he's truly, I think, their best point of attack defender. So yeah, I think sort of all those things explain somewhat of a slower start. With Gobert, even though the on-off numbers are there, I haven't totally been thrilled with his defense, quite frankly. I mean, from a rebounding standpoint, it's kind of underwhelming. He's grabbing like 8 rebounds a game, which I believe is his lowest number since his second year in the league. So obviously not great in that regard, and you just need some extra rebounding. We saw them get killed on the glass against the Lakers on Wednesday night, which really shouldn't happen because the Lakers are a smaller team. And I think Gobert played a role in that. Offensively, Gobert is really clearly declining. We saw that at the end of last year, we saw that in the playoffs, and it's looked even worse. And I have to say, I do think that's partly connected to Conley not playing as much, declining a little bit himself, just because that connection has just been one of the things that has made this Wolves offense work. Conley makes it a point of emphasis to get Gobert involved, and they just don't totally have that in the same way, with both of them getting a little bit older. And I mean, Gobert's 33. A lot of times bigs, once they get to this like mid to even early 30s range, they decline a little bit. And he's always been a guy that's a little bit limited offensively, and I think we're seeing that. I mean, again, 5-game sample size, but he's on pace to have the second lowest field goal attempts of his entire career, going back to his rookie season when he literally played less than 10 minutes a game. And I mean, it's crazy to me. And when you look at, I mean, we brought up the on-off numbers with the defense, but I also think it's worth noting that the Wolves' offense has been significantly worse with Gobert on the court. And it's a tough situation because it's if they don't have Gobert on the court defensively, they struggle. If they have him on the court offensively, they struggle. So it's a really tough situation to navigate. Looking at the numbers now, 109 offensive rating with him on the court and a 128 offensive rating with him off the court. So just as a point of reference, that translates to the best offense when he's off the court and the 28th ranked offense when he's on the court. I think that's just kind of crazy, and it just goes to show what a difficult position they're put in with Gobert right now, because defensively, you kind of have to play him. Offensively, it looks really rough when you do play him because, the increased spacing with the Randle Reid pairing is a real thing, but it's also a real thing that the defense just isn't going to be as good. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to discuss with this Timberwolves team. On a positive note, Jaden McDaniels is awesome. I might find a way, even if I'm not talking about the Wolves, to bring him up every single episode because he's just one of my guys. And he's been absolutely fantastic. His growth as an offensive player is just truly insane, and he seems to be reaching another level this year. I think that's huge for this Wolves team, especially as they navigate playing without Anthony Edwards. I mean, so far he's averaging 18 points a game. I don't know if that's sustainable, but I could totally see him finishing the year averaging like around 16, 15 a game, and that would be a huge boost for this Wolves team. He's attacking the rim with just incredible force, creating for himself at a really high level. All things that we've kind of been waiting to see from McDaniels, and he's really putting it together here in his age 25 season. So that's fantastic. Julius Randle's been really nice as well. I would like to see them, especially without Edwards though. I'd like to see them lean into like Randle as that offensive hub. We saw that a little bit in the Pacers game, and then they kind of went away from it against the Nuggets and Lakers. I get it against the Nuggets. He was drawing a really tough matchup in Aaron Gordon against the Lakers. I think they could have leaned into that. Hopefully they do lean into that a little bit more against the Hornets on Saturday. But Randle so far in the season, he's averaging 26, 6 and 5. Just a really fantastic all-star, all NBA level season, super early, but he's been really stepping it up. And I think if the Wolves are able to get past these next 6 games without Edwards, I think Randle and McDaniels will absolutely continue the production. It's just a matter of can they get consistent production out of really anyone 3 through like 10 in the rotation. With that being said, that's all I have for the Wolves for now. I could talk about them all day, but I think it's time to get into my conversation with Chris and talk some NBA draft with the college season right ahead of us. I think it's the perfect time to do it and an absolutely loaded draft class. So, without any further ado, let's get into my conversation with Chris about the NBA draft and the fun set. Joining me now is Chris Kline for an early 2026 NBA draft preview. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing good, Eamon. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, happy to have you on the show. And yeah, perfect timing right as the college season is around the corner, starting up next Tuesday. Should be a ton of fun to talk about some of these prospects. So we're just going to go over your top 5 prospects and then just 3 guys that you're a little bit higher on than consensus right now. So yeah, let's just start off with the number one prospect on your big board.
All right. Yeah, my number one prospect right now, there's a lot of kind of debate between the top three in this class, and I don't think that's gonna be settled anytime soon. But right now I have Cam Boozer from Duke, the power forward, 6'9" freshman, 18 years old on draft day. Darryn Peterson, AJ Dybantsa, we'll talk about them, but I think Cam just really has something special. I think he's further along than those guys right now in terms of just how polished he is, how smart he is. He's one of the smartest, like, big men, power forward types to enter the league, I think, in a long time. We'll obviously see how things play out at Duke. Nothing is set in stone at this point, but comes in with a lot of accolades from his high school days, one of the most winning and accomplished high schoolers in a hot minute. Son of Carlos Boozer, obviously a former NBA All-Star, so it's kind of a family thing with him. And yeah, he's my number one right now. Super strong, super skilled, can space out to the three-point line, dominate in the post, really high-level passer. I've seen some like Jokic and Duncan comps thrown around, which I think is a little extreme, but it just speaks to how well he thinks the game right now. So yeah, I have Cam Boozer at number one.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that pick. Like you said, I mean, this top 3 is just totally interchangeable, and a lot of people have different number ones. But yeah, I definitely like you going with Boozer there. I feel like there's been a little bit of separation, at least before the season started. I've seen a lot of people go with Peterson number one, but I definitely like the Boozer pick. And just from my perspective, it certainly seems like he has the highest floor out of any of these guys. Whereas Dybantsa, especially, I feel like there's just a little bit more risk. He might have more upside, but there's just a little bit more variety there. And then Darryn Peterson, a little bit of the same. But yeah, I mean, I think Boozer is just the safest bet in this class, probably. And it's hard not to believe in him going to Duke, a school that just routinely produces number one overall picks. So yeah, it should be a really interesting season. Is there like any area of growth for him this season that you see, or do you just see him as like such a polished all around prospect?
Yeah, I mean, there's always room to improve. I think if he could really ramp up the 3-point shooting, that would be big. He's still not the most like, he's not shooting a ton out there yet, but like you said, I think the high floor statement is right. And I think you're correct that AJ probably has the highest ceiling, and then Peterson maybe has the highest median, if that's how you want to kind of categorize these guys. But he's really, like, I just have a tough time not buying someone that smart. I think, like, feel for the game is one of the most underrated, like, star indicators out there. I think if you just know how to play the game at a high level, the other stuff can kind of fall into place. He's not the greatest athlete of this group. He's not like a superstar leaper or anything like that, but he's really strong again, so he's going to be able to handle the physicality at the next level, even though he's super young. And yeah, I'm really interested to see how like his season goes at Duke. There's going to be a lot of Cooper Flag talk just because they're so close together. Like, is he the better prospect there? I don't want to like. I certainly think that's a conversation, which speaks to how good Cam is because Cooper is one of the best, two or three best prospects of the last decade. But yeah, this is a special class. I have Cam number one right now. Will he be number one in 3 months? Who knows? But yeah, he's a super well-rounded and complete prospect right now. So, and like you said, it's John Shire's a great coach. I think he'll be put in a position to succeed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the feel for the game point is really key, and I really like that one because I definitely think that's something that goes a little bit overlooked when just evaluating some of these prospects. I just think feel for the game is so important, especially in the modern NBA. And another thing that we talked about with Boozer is just his like all around impact and versatility, and I think that's gonna really bode well for him in this draft cycle. And it's interesting you brought up Cooper Flag, just because he could have been in this class, and it really could have been a four-man race for this number one pick. So that's something that I'm always going to think about. Just with how talented we have, three like clear cut potential number one picks. There truly could have been four of them if Cooper didn't reclassify. So that's always something that I'm just gonna have in the back of my head when I'm thinking about this class.
Yeah, I'd be really interested what Cooper Flag and Cedric Coward would look like on this Duke team this year, because Coward's probably number two on a lot of rookie ladders right now, and he almost went to Duke. He kind of a last minute decision last year, so there's a lot of what ifs with this Duke team. But yeah, I Cam should like Cooper was I believe the fourth freshman to win the Wooden Award. If Cam is the fifth, that would not shock me at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good point, and he's probably just a little bit better positioned to win it than an AJ or a Peterson, just given just how well rounded he is, and really more so like NBA ready than these guys. So I feel like he's gonna step in and make an immediate impact. But I mean, who knows? We have two other really talented freshmen, so I'm sure you have one of those two as your number two on your big board. And who do you got there?
Yeah, we've already talked about it. I have Darryn Peterson of Kansas at number two, 6'5", 195 roughly. And he's going to be 19 on draft day. Like the best guard prospect in a long time. It's like he would be the number one pick in almost any other draft that doesn't involve Cam Boozer or Victor Wembanyama for me. Really special. So I want to like not understate that. He's a really good player. Very few weaknesses in his game as well. I've tried to like think back long enough to find a guard prospect that I put on that level. Like Markel Fultz is someone who comes to mind who is just so dominant and special at Washington and had so few weaknesses in his game. We all know how that went. We don't need to talk about that, but I don't foresee that sort of issue happening with Peterson once he gets to the next level. Just a super dynamic scorer. There's going to be some pretty lofty comparisons made over the course of this season. He's already just like lighting up exhibition games. I don't think it's going to take him very long to get up to speed. Kansas has been kind of a weird program the last couple years. Bill Self hasn't had a lot of prospects on Peterson's level, so I'm really interested to see how that works out. But Jayhawks should be a really good team. And Peterson, again, like Cam, if he's winning the Wooden Award and if he's one of the best freshmen of the last decade, wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense, and that's pretty interesting that you go all the way back to nearly 10 years ago, and you're putting him in those conversations as the best guard prospect. Because we've seen a few really good ones. I mean, Cade Cunningham in 2021, even like Dylan Harper. I know a lot of people were saying that he could have been a number one pick, if it wasn't for Flag. But yeah, I mean, super interesting player, and I feel like we're already starting to see it a little bit, like you said, with the lofty comparisons. I feel like Kobe Bryant's been floated around, and obviously I think that's a little bit too rich just because he's a top 10 player of all time. But with that being said, like, is there a specific player who reminds you of Peterson, either in the NBA now or just historically?
That's tough. I'm not always great with player comps. I've seen some like Shea Gilgeous Alexander comparisons that are interesting. I don't think he's quite like Shea is just kind of on another level as far as how he's moving. There's no one in the world that can move like him on the court, but Peterson does have some of that, like gear shift, stop, start, draw contact, get guys off balance. That kind of stuff he can do pretty well already. The pull-up jumper is falling at a really high level for a taller guard. He is somewhat of a similar body type to Shea. I don't know if he's quite as long, but yeah, so I can sort of, like, again, that is a really high comp. That's one of the 3, 4 best players in the world at worst. So I don't want to put that level of expectation on him, nor should we. But that's an interesting point of comparison if you're trying to like chart the ceiling of Peterson, because guys who are that tall and can move that well and hit pull-up jumpers tend to have, it's really hard to stop him. And he's going to be a good defender too. He might not be on the level defensively of a Cam Boozer at this point, but has super long arms, can really make plays when he's engaged and active. He's going to be a two-way player. Um, yeah, he's going to be a star.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I think that's an interesting point there. And then just looking at him overall, I feel like right now he's a combo guard, more so like an off guard. But do you see that long term he could potentially develop into like a true lead guard, sort of similar to Shea's career path where he came into the league? He was more so viewed as that like combo guard, maybe even more of a shooting guard, and then he eventually becomes this like totally elite guard. Do you see that happening for him long term, or maybe even this year at Kansas?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think he's a pretty good passer as it is. That is definitely one area where he can improve, or he can just keep ramping up his point guard skills. But he's making quality reads out of the pick and roll. He's very smart and aware. He's not a selfish player. He's going to dominate the ball, obviously, just because he's such a talented scorer, and he's going to go out and get his own bucket sometimes. But he also makes an effort to elevate the guys around him and play within a team construct. So I don't think that's going to be a huge concern for him. Would he benefit from having like another really smart high level playmaker next to him at the next level? I'm sure most guys would. I think a two guard setup is often the best way, but like even with Shea is not some super elite creator for others. He's not like an all world passer, but he has grown, like you said. He's been able to kind of leverage his own gravity to set up guys more. I think last year without Giddey, we got to see more of him kind of really manning the offense and not just being the guy who attacks and finishes things. So I definitely think that's in the cards for Peterson.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense, and I think that will be something worth monitoring just with his development and this year and then in the future. But yeah, I definitely agree that like that two guard setup is definitely the best for most players. But I think just having that extra versatility to be a playmaker along with being an elite three-level scorer, and then obviously what he brings to the table defensively as well is just gonna be super valuable to him long term. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I think we can move ahead to number three, who I assume would be AJ.
Yeah, AJ Dybantsa of BYU. Again, like this guy could be a number one pick most years. I'm really interested to see how his season goes at BYU. I think you kind of nailed it on the head earlier. He's probably has the highest absolute ceiling just because he's a freak of nature athlete. Definitely has the lowest floor, I think, and the most to work on of these three. I don't think he's quite as fine tuned as Boozer and Peterson, but he's still like incredible athlete, 6'9", 200 plus pounds. He's going to be 19 on draft day, and he can already just get wherever he wants on the floor. He has a really nice handle for a wing that size. He has the burst and the athleticism to create advantages, to get where he wants, to hit shots from anywhere. He has a really fluid pull-up jumper. He's super, super advanced. I think people are going to kind of throw him into that big wing category with guys like Brandon Miller and Ace Bailey, guys of that nature. I think Dybantsa is just on a different level as a scorer right now. Now, decision making, stuff like that, he's going to have to improve. He can kind of lean on the hero ball aspects of his skill set a little bit too much sometimes, but is not incapable of being a good passer. He makes some really nice reads. So I really think he's further along than most of these like supercharged, just mega athletes who come into college basketball and rely exclusively on their tools to score points. Yeah, he's gonna be awesome. BYU has a great coach, a great system. They were in the Sweet 16 last year. Like he's going to be in a good position to succeed with a quality team around him. So if AJ has an awesome year and the right team lands at number one, and they're like, we think we can develop this guy and put him in the right spots and really maximize his talent, and they want to pick him first overall, I don't think that would be an unreasonable outcome. So all three of these, a lot of the number one conversation at the end of the year might come down to just which team is picking number one and what do they need specifically. But AJ's really, really cool. We've been watching the highlight reels for years now from his high school tape. So like, he's probably the most well known of these guys, I think, for like a national audience. And he's gonna have an awesome season. So I'm excited to watch him.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely not as into the draft as you are, but like sort of more so from like a casual draft standpoint. He was a guy that I've been following for a while. Like you said, just like that nationally known player, and he's also like kind of close to like where I'm from. He's from Mass, so I always was kind of rooting for him for that reason. But yeah, definitely seeing some of like his weaknesses as like a decision maker, and then defensively, I think he has all the tools to be like a truly elite two-way guy. It's just a matter of like putting it together and consistency. And then you look at the other two guys and they just don't have those same weaknesses. I feel like at this point he's kind of that number three guy, at least for me, and at least from a lot of people that I read their work on and watch draft videos. I feel like he's more so morphed down to that like number three guy. That can obviously change over the course of a season. And I think like upside wise, if you want to bet on that and have him number one, I think that's also totally fair. But yeah, just a super interesting prospect. I mean, when you look at like a do it all win with just all the physical tools in the world, he really has everything in his bag to be successful. So I think that definitely makes a lot of sense, and it should be super fascinating seeing how it all plays out. And yeah, I definitely agree. BYU is just an awesome situation for him. You look at Kevin Yon, he runs a really good program, returning a lot of guys from last year, and then Rob Wright, the transfer point guard, I think should be big playing next to him, especially just with some of the weaknesses in AJ's game. I think that could really help him a lot. So yeah, if you had to say, I know you mentioned like fit could be big, especially whoever gets the number one pick. It could just sort of be an eye of the beholder situation. Is there like a specific team that you think might have a shot at this number one pick and might ultimately lean AJ?
Um, hmm. I that's a great question. I mean, it could depend on a lot of things. I mean, like, I mean, Brooklyn, they're kind of a blank slate right now. I would probably prefer the stability of someone like Cam or Peterson in their shoes, but I could see the Nets kind of talking themselves into AJ as just the ultimate ceiling swing. Washington likes these big athletic wings a lot. They've kind of gone away from this in this year's draft, but I could see Washington kind of talking themselves into Dybantsa. I don't know if there's any team where I'm like right now at this stage, I would recommend them taking Dybantsa or anything like that. Just in my head, I do think Cam and Peterson are maybe like a half tier above or in the upper level of their own little tier. But yeah, it would not shock me if in 3 months we're having a different conversation. It depends on how Dybantsa plays this year, but I'm expecting big numbers. So wouldn't shock me if one of those bad teams with less infrastructure is like, we're just gonna take the home run swing here. That might not be the best path for AJ really, but that could be the kind of situation he ends up in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think those two teams were the first two that came to mind for me, especially Brooklyn. And I mean, like you said, a lot can change. We still haven't had any college basketball be played yet. We've barely had NBA basketball. But yeah, just Brooklyn with that like sort of clean slate and just drafting a ton of playmakers last year, I think it could make a lot of sense to just take that upside swing with AJ. But yeah, I mean, a ton can change, and it's a little too early to like project these guys to teams. I was just curious if there were any other teams that come to mind. And then the Wizards is another good one because I mean they're definitely gonna have a shot at that number one pick again. Haven't had great luck in the lottery, but they do really seem to love those like athletic wins, like you said, and I think that could be a really intriguing fit as they sort of lean into like defense and length. Assuming that AJ can develop nicely on defense, I think that could be a really interesting fit for him. Did you have any other
No,
AJ thoughts?
I was just gonna say quickly. Atlanta does have New Orleans pick, and with like Johnson and Okongwu and Kristaps in the front court, I could see them being more, you know, I don't know if Boozer would be as much of a fit in Atlanta, so I could see the Hawks with Trae Young as like the up-tempo setup guy being like, we just want to get AJ and run. That could be fun. Yeah. Uh, yeah. I think those are good teams to look at there.
That's definitely a good one with the Atlanta pick, because I mean, especially with how poorly the Pelicans have started off this season, I feel like everyone's kind of talking about it like the Hawks are just this sleeping giant in the draft where they already have a super nice roster around Trey, and they could get even better because they could potentially get one of these top three guys, and that's just kind of insane to think about, honestly. So yeah, that's definitely a really good pick, and I mean, I feel like everyone's kind of said it, but it's just insane that New Orleans traded that unprotected pick to move up 10 spots to draft Derek Queen, who, at least personally, I did like as a prospect, but trading that unprotected pick is just an unbelievable mistake.
Yeah, I love Derek Queen, but that was one of the worst trades in a minute.
No, literally. Honestly, like off the top of my head, I can't think of like a worse like trade in like the past like 5, 10 years, just because it's not just like you can't see the vision at all. It's just like it's just so bold when you're drafting two rookies who are raw and you were the 14th seed last year and you're automatically giving up your pick from next year in a loaded class. It never made any sense.
Yeah, I mean they're basically banking on Zion being healthy all year and everything going right, which is just an absurd thing to do given what's happened with Zion's career. But yeah, it is bad business.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think we can move on to number four because this is where it gets interesting. I feel like everyone sort of knows the top three, not necessarily the order, but who do you have here at number four?
Yeah, I have Nate Ament of Tennessee at 4 right now. I think I don't know if it's like consensus. I do think he's kind of the most popular guy after that first wave. I'm interested to see if he can kind of live up to it. I've been wavering a little bit on him, and I mean the ceiling is just through the roof. 6'10", super skilled jump shooter, has some like passing chops. The defense is going to be really really high level once he adds some strength and kind of works through these like early career, decision making issues that everyone has to deal with. Like the upside's there. His ceiling is as high as really anyone in the draft up there with those top guys, just because of how fluid and long he is as an athlete. The like exhibition stuff we've seen from him so far is not wasn't like ideal. He's making tough shots. I do think like there's going to be a lot of people comparing him to Ace Bailey this year just because they can both kind of struggle with physicality and struggle to kind of create separation with their handle. They're just not there yet. I think Ament's a little bit further along in terms of just how he processes the game than Ace was, but super talented, is going to be the guy at Tennessee for the most part this year. That should be a good team in the SEC. A lot of guys left this past offseason, so he's going to have a wide open lane to put up a lot of points, a lot of numbers. So if he just kind of locks down the number 4 spot, it would not shock me.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Definitely seeing Ament trending towards this like number four spot very early in the process still. But I mean, when you look at his physical tools paired with just his ability as a shot maker, I think it makes a lot of sense. He's just a great shooter. And with that size, there's also a ton of defensive potential. I think the big critique I've heard, you sort of mentioned a little bit, was just like his shot creation ability, his ability to create separation. And I think that could potentially falter his draft stock a little bit. But at the same time, with a guy who has this many physical tools and is already so far along as a shooter, I think he has a solid place as like a top 10 guy. Obviously, I feel like he keeps saying it, a lot can change, but for now, I feel like he's very solidly within that like top 10, top 5 range. Yeah, so where are you at with sort of just him as a creator and then as a playmaker as well?
I mean, I think he like makes some really interesting passes. I don't think he's like selfish at all necessarily. There are some tough shots that he's just going to have to kind of wean off of and not take as much now that he's in college, and that'll, you know, I think he's in a better position. I made the Ace comparison lightly there. Like he's in a better position at Tennessee. He's going to have more structure, just a better team and coach. situation than Ace had at Rutgers. So I think the foundation is there for him to be in a good position and to make those changes. He makes some interesting passers. He's not like he has a pretty solid handle. I think he, is as he adds strength and can kind of get lower and handle contact a bit more, that will become a lot easier for him to get downhill and get to the rim. That might be a few years down the road once he's already in the NBA and working with like NBA strength coaches. But he's got a pretty decent handle. He's a good passer when he wants to be. He can shoot a shot anywhere. He is notably like 2-3 inches taller than Ace. That's another like place where he has the advantage. So I think the ceiling is very real with Ament, and I'm hoping that Tennessee is like a really good spot for him. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you summed it up nicely there. And I mean, I think playing at Tennessee will be a big advantage for him. I know you mentioned the Ace comparison, and that Rutgers team was just, I mean, it's kind of crazy to say because they ended up having two top five prospects, but everything outside of those two guys was just a complete mess. So, I mean, it's hard not to, feel a little bit bad for Ace, and it does sort of explain some of like the shot creation problems there, but I just don't think that's going to be the case for Nate here at Tennessee. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, super interesting prospect. Very intrigued to see how this college season plays out for him. And I think we're going to be talking a lot more about him as the draft moves on. So yeah, let's get to your number five guy. Who did you have there?
Right. I have Mikel Brown Jr., the point guard from Louisville, another freshman. I 6'3", like 172, I think is where he's listed right now. So that's obviously going to be a sticking point for a lot of people because he's on the smaller side and he's not very strong, which can be a tough combination for a point guard looking to go to the NBA. But I think he's kind of an outlier just in the fact that he's an elite shooter with really deep range on his pull up, really shifty and dynamic ball handler, and he's just one of the best passers we've seen in a while. Is going to really make some incredible reads out of the pick and roll and set the table for guys. So I really believe in him as like an offensive on ball primary playmaking engine in college. At the next level, I know he just had like a 2 for 15 night in the preseason, but I'm not worried about it. He's a good shooter. I think he's going to have a really big year at Louisville. Tend to churn out really quality guards at Louisville, so I think it's a great setup for him. He's going to have some competition in that backcourt for touches because they have Adrian Woolley and a lot of other guys. But overall, I think it's a good spot for him. And, I mean, if you're kind of looking for someone in the Trae Young, Dame Lillard range in terms of like high end outcomes, you could probably talk yourself into Brown right now. The defense is going to be a concern just because he's so small and so skinny, but yeah, offensively, he's a really special player. He had an awesome summer at different circuits at the U19 World Cup and things like that. So I think he's a really special player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a guy that, as the college season goes on, he's going to end up being just one of my guys in this draft class. I always sort of gravitate towards those like smaller, slender guards that are just so skilled. I think they're just so fun to watch. Just, I mean, being a smaller guard myself growing up, I always sort of gravitated towards those players. But yeah, just a super fun player, and the blend of like shooting, all around scoring, playmaking, I think does make him a fairly high upside guy. Obviously, the size thing is a little bit concerning. I saw something that said he could be closer to 6'5". He would have had one of those growth spurts, but I mean, who knows? I feel like every year we kind of don't really know how tall guys are until the combine. I think Ace is a
Yeah,
good example of that, where it was like Ace is 6'10", and then it's like, wait, what? He's actually closer to like 6'7", 6'8".
yeah,
You never really know, and I don't know. Just looking at him, he doesn't totally look like he's 6'5", but that was something I did see recently. But he's still very slender, which is going to be a concern, even if you have the height. Especially making that transition to the NBA. Just the frame is really difficult. I mean, they're world class athletes. They're years older than them, and then defensively, you're always going to get targeted with that slender frame. I mean, there's just so much to like with him, and he's just so skilled that I see him being a clear like top five, top 10 guy in this class. And yeah, a lot of teams in the lottery could use a guard for sure. So very interested to see how his season plays out, and definitely, at least for now, I think he's the best like true like lead guard in this class.
yeah. I think that's I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I again, this is a guy who's just going to put up big numbers all year. So this is a really talented class. I think Brown probably would have been in like the 3-4 conversation this past year. Like this is a really deep and talented group. We'll see how things go. There's a little bit more uncertainty with him maybe than the other guys just because of how deep the Louisville backcourt is and how tough it can be for smaller guards translating to the next level. We'll see how many teams are really buying in after the season and once we get into the proper pre-draft cycle. But I think Brown's going to have a big year. I think he's a really smart, high-level facilitator that is going to make guys better. And I expect him to stay pretty high on boards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you summed it up nicely there. I think we can move ahead to just three of your guys that you're just a little bit higher on than consensus right now. So I guess we can start with just the player who you're higher on than consensus and just, I guess, like your guy so far in this draft class.
My guy, if I mean, I'm really high on Hans Steinbach, who's going to be at Washington this year. 6'9", 210, coming over from Germany, had a really dominant run in the U19 World Cup this summer. It has just been lights out overseas. Another one of those guys where I just think the feel for the game and like the really high floor is appealing to me. I don't think he's going to flame out at the next level. I don't think there's a lot of downside risk there. There always is. Nothing is a sure thing when it comes to the draft, but Steinbach is super strong. He handles himself really well in the post. He's not going to be an elite rim protector, but he's going to know where to be on defense, and he's going to throw his weight around a little bit. And then offensively, he's going to score super efficiently in the post, make some really high-level passes off the short roll or around the elbow. He can space out to the three-point line a little bit, has some like attack closeout, drive and finish stuff. He's just really skilled and smart, and he's been just putting up crazy numbers all summer against quality competition. So I think he's going to have a really big year at Washington. I think he's going to very quickly rise up boards. A lot of the mocks I've been reading have him in like the teens or the 20s right now, and I just do not see that holding. He's number 6 on my board. I would not be completely surprised if he's like in the top 10 conversation by season's end. In fact, I am anticipating it clearly. So I'm really high on Steinbach.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And I mean, just so much can change. And I feel like if you look at draft boards from this time last year, there's so many guys that were in that like teens, 20s range that just shot up to clear lottery picks, even like that, like top 10, top 7 range. Even you look at a guy like Konkanipple, he was not viewed as a clear top 5 guy until very close to the draft. And I mean, with Hines, I feel like the feel for the game, like you said, is just totally there, and that's going to be a massive advantage. And then just how versatile he is on both ends of the court, and he can really make an all around impact. And yeah, when you were going through his game, I was like, yeah, I can't really, off the top of my head, haven't totally like dove into him as much as you have, but can't really see too many flaws. So I feel like that makes a lot of sense, and he's a guy that has a fairly high floor and also a very high ceiling. So yeah, super interested to see how his season plays out at Washington, and definitely a guy to keep your eyes on throughout this college season.
Yeah, he's really great. Do you want to go? You said 2 more?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I mean, I'm just kind of going down my board here. This is my 7th prospect, but I think I'm higher on him the most. I have Bennett Stirtz, who's going to be at Iowa this year. A lot of college basketball fans will know that he was at Drake last year with Ben McCollum, who got the Iowa job, took Sturtz with him. There's some buzz around Sturtz as a potential first-round pick last year, even coming out of a mid-major program because he was just so dominant. He played almost every minute for that team, was one of the highest usage guards in college basketball. But he goes to Iowa now, so he's going to play a much better competition. There is maybe some downside risk there if he just can't handle the physicality as well as people expect, but he was so good in the tournament, knocked off Missouri in the first round. Like, I'm pretty confident that it's going to translate. He's such a smart player, just super high level pick and roll guard, gets to his spots, not a great athlete. There are maybe some strength concerns on both ends, especially on defense, but he just stops and starts so well and has so many tricks to get to where he wants to be. He has a really fluid pull-up jumper. So I'm really not worried about the scoring, and then the passing is just off the charts. He, up there with Brown is just one of the best overall passers in this draft. Maybe Boozer you can throw into the mix as like the best passing big. So really high level playmaker. He's gonna make guys better. Super efficient. The defense concerns are real. I mean, having a 22-year-old 6'4", 180 guard as your number 7 prospect is not normal. I don't normally, I'm normally try to fade the older guys a little bit because that's just the best thing to do. But I'm just really high on Sturtz. I think he's a winning player. I'm expecting a big season at Iowa, and yeah, I think he's going to put up numbers, and I think he's going to catch a lot of NBA teams, capture their attention pretty early on in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's definitely a guy that I'm super high on, and then just going back to like the whole like skilled guard thing. I mean, how can I not like his game? And he just jumps off the screen. He's just so dynamic. I think really everyone sort of got to know who he is based off that March Madness run. I think it was only 2 games, but he was just so electric. And then the upset over Missouri in a year that we didn't have many upsets, it definitely brought a lot of attention to him. And yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see where he had gone if he had stayed in the draft, but ultimately decides to go to Iowa, and I think that's going to benefit him just proving himself a little bit more against higher competition. Obviously, there's some risk there, like you said, but at the same time, just with how skilled of a shooter and playmaker he is, I think it will work out well for him, and he's going to establish himself as like a clear lottery guy, in my opinion. And I definitely agree, and I like how high you are on him, especially because I feel like he's a guy that has like somewhat of a wide range. I've seen him like anywhere from like maybe like 6 to like somewhere in the 20s. But he's a guy I think you can't overthink it with Sturts. I mean, I talked about this last week on my podcast, actually, just kind of a little bit off topic. Me and my guest just got into like draft stuff, but we were just saying like you can't overthink it with some of these great college prospects that are just so NBA ready. Like yeah, the star upside might not totally be there, but at the same time, hey, guess what? A lot of times awesome college players are awesome in the NBA. And I think that's something I don't know if you can speak to this at all, just doing like draft boards every year. Especially with like players returning in the NIL era. I feel like we're seeing a lot more like older prospects, and I feel like teams are becoming a little bit more open minded to them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I definitely think there is something to fading a lot of older prospects. I do think like when you draft a guy who's 18 versus 23, that's just 5 more years of development that you're gonna get before like the upside thing is real. But I do think with someone like Sturts particularly, like I'm really interested to see how his season plays out at Iowa and what his role looks like. It's the same coach, but far better teammates, far better competition. He was playing like 39.5 minutes a game for Drake last year. They ran quite pretty much everything through him. I mean, he was in complete control all game long, doing pretty much everything for that offense. I don't think that's going to be what they do at Iowa. I don't know if it would play as well for an entire season in the Big Ten. But this is a guy who just is so clearly knows what he's doing out there, knows how to get the ball to guys at different spots, knows how to get to his spots, knows how to control the tempo and operate under pressure and not get sped up. I think he's just a really high level thinker as well as a very skilled player. So, like going back to the feel thing, I think you just have to buy stock in that. Now, is like the defensive concerns are probably elevated with him because he is 4 or 5 years older than a lot of the guys being drafted in the lottery range. He still hasn't had the strength development. Like, that is a very real concern. I don't think he's going to be a very good defender in the NBA, and teams will have to weigh that how they weigh that. But I think the offense with him is just so ridiculous that you just kind of have to bet on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you were just going through his game and then just thinking about watching him a little bit last year, I mean, the guy that really comes to mind to me is Tyrese Halliburton. Just how well he can control the floor with that blend of shooting and playmaking, and just how incredibly gifted he is in terms of like feel for the game. And then you look at Halliburton, he wasn't like a 4 year guy, but he was a 2 year guy. So I feel like, I mean, to a much lesser extent, that argument was used on him, but he was just so NBA ready at the same time, and they just have like similar build. So I feel like that's like the comparison that always comes to mind with me when talking about Sturts. But yeah, just probably at the top of my list, other than like the top 3 guys of just players that I'm like super excited to watch this college season.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm really interested to see how it pans out at Iowa. As far as my third guy, um, there are a lot of potential options here. I I'm gonna go with a guy who probably is underrated a little bit because of just physical attributes. Again, I'm gonna go with Labaron Philon from Alabama. Speaking of like guys who are returning for their sophomore year in the NIL era, Philon was right up against the wire about whether he would stay in the draft or go back. Decides to go back. Obviously, no Mark Sears at Alabama this year, so he's kind of going to step into the main point guard spotlight there with the Crimson Tide. Another great program. I think Alabama's going to win a lot of games this year, and they're going to be very much at the front of like the national title conversation. Philon's awesome. He's super skinny. The physicality argument is going to be a thing with him too, but he's a really active and smart defender. Like I don't think he's a pushover on that end of the floor. He might not be like walling guys up at the point of attack, but he's going to be making plays off the ball and finding ways to contribute defensively. And then offensively, like he needs to shoot more threes more consistently. That's going to be another thing with him. I think some of the rim finishing got a little wonky last year because he couldn't handle contact. But from like the few exhibition games we've seen this year in Alabama, it already looks like he's doing better in that department. He's getting to the foul line a lot. He's taking bumps and finishing through stuff at the rim. So I'm really confident in this guy. He has a crazy floater, really good touch, so I'm not too worried about the 3-point shot. Really smart passer out of the pick and roll. I think he's going to have a big year, and I have him at 11 on my board right now. Wouldn't be surprised if he ends up even a little bit higher than that, but I think he's a pretty clear lottery guy right now. And again, a lot of mocks, you might find him maybe towards the back of the teens or in the 20s, but I think Philon's a lottery guy for me.
Yeah, that's a great one. He was definitely a guy that I watched a good amount of last year because that Alabama team was just so good, and he really jumped off the screen. But at the same time, it was like, I don't know, maybe he's like a fringe first round guy last year. I'd be interested to get your perspective on that. But at the same time, when he went back to school, I was a little bit surprised. But at the same time, I thought it was a decision that will really benefit him, especially just being able to run the show this year at Alabama and really develop a little bit physically. And then, yeah, just show a little bit more of his game. I mean, defensively, I agree with you. Despite like the frame, he is very active on that end of the floor, and I feel like that's one of the more impressive things that separates him from like your typical smaller guard. And then yeah, he's just so dynamic with the ball in his hands. Definitely does need to work through a few growing pains, and I don't know if he's like a guy even coming out as a sophomore that's gonna immediately be like a first team all rookie guy. But I think long term, I think he could be a true like star level point guard. And yeah, super interested to see him play. But yeah, where did you sort of view him last year in the draft cycle, and what did you think about his decision to return to Alabama?
I mean, I think he probably I think most of like the experts who are plugged in and know what NBA teams are thinking were saying like he's kind of on the bubble, late 20s, early 30s, that kind of spot. So in that sense, I understand why he went back. I had him a lot higher. I think I had him at like 15 or 16, somewhere in that range. So really not far off from where I have him now. I was pretty high on him last year. I think he's going to have a better season though this year. He's already showing signs of improvement. He's going to have a bigger role. So I definitely think if he wasn't like a lock to go in the first round last year, like going back to Alabama, getting a really nice NIL paycheck, and then going potentially in the lottery this year it's definitely the right career move. So I think I would have liked to have seen him in the draft last year. I would have been excited to watch him in the NBA this season, but I think he probably made the right choice.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really beneficial to these guys to have that NIL option to go back. And I think it's just going to benefit, especially guards, just because making that transition as a guard to the NBA is just harder than other positions, in my opinion. So I think that's going to be something that we see next few years that just so many players will benefit from going back a year. And yeah, I like it. I think it's just really good for the draft and good for basketball overall to have these guys coming in a little bit more mature. So I personally think it's a super positive thing. Without going like too in depth into these players, are there any other guys like Philon that you could see like benefiting from returning this year and like rising their stock?
Yeah, I think Thomas Howe at Florida had a really nice tournament run, is going to have a bigger role this year. Florida's going to be right back in that kind of championship conversation. I think he's a guy who could rise up a lot of boards, just a really smart, efficient player all around on the wing. Todd Pettiford is in a very similar bucket to Philon at Auburn. He was the sixth man last year, was kind of in the shadow of Janai Broom. Now he's going to be one of, if not the guy at Auburn as a sophomore. Super talented scorer, good point guard. Some concerns about his frame, but I think he's a top 20, 25 guy for me right now. So yeah, those are the two that stand out the most. They're like obviously like Lindeborg, who went from UAB to Michigan. Guys like JT Toppin at Texas Tech. Those are some more upperclassmen, like juniors and seniors, but yeah, I definitely think, like you said, with the way that NIL is shaping up, we're going to have a lot more of the sophomore, junior, senior types kind of coming into the mid to late first round, and fewer freshmen who are just willing to risk it when they could return to school and boost their stock with another year or two. So I definitely think like the landscape is shifting a little bit in that sense.
Yeah, most definitely. I think those are some great examples and just more guys to keep an eye on throughout the season. Before we officially wrap up, I'd love to talk some Sixers with you because I know you're a big Sixers fan and they've been truly one of the best stories in the NBA so far. Still one of the only undefeated teams left, which is just pretty crazy. But yeah, what was your expectation going into this year and what has been sort of your first impressions of the Sixers so far?
I really don't even know what my expectations were. I've just been trying not to get my hopes up with this team. I've been hurt too many times. I think my default mode is pessimism. Like if you on paper, Philly has always been capable, if they're healthy, of being one of the best teams in the NBA. Like with Joel out there, I don't think that is like controversial. They were 2 years ago, but like I just it's 4 games. The defense is a real problem right now. It's going to come crashing back down to earth a little bit here eventually, but they have exceeded all reasonable expectations for me. I love Tyrese. I knew he was super motivated after last year. I don't know if I saw this level of he's just taken a jump. He looks awesome out there, and he's like addressed so many of his weaknesses, and he's just shooting the lights out. It's really awesome to see. VJ, like I liked VJ a lot. I think I had him like 6 on my board. I had him much higher than Ace Bailey, but I wasn't like this is the only option at number 3. I liked him a lot. I thought it was a good pick, but I didn't think like 34 points on opening night was a realistic outcome there. So he too will probably come back down to earth a little bit, but it's been awesome. They're super fun. That's really all you can ask for as a fan. I don't think the Sixers are going to win the championship this year or anything, but they're just super fun right now. The vibes are high. Paul George and McCain are going to be back soon, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they stay fun at the very least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in a wide open Eastern Conference, who knows? I mean, I feel like the Cavs and Knicks are pretty clear, like or at least Eastern Conference favorites. But then, I mean, who knows? I feel like the Sixers team, it's somewhat sustainable and they can make the playoffs at the very least, which personally going into the season I wasn't expecting. But yeah, they've just been so fun. And I haven't watched every single full Sixers game, but I've watched like at least a little bit from every Sixers game. Just because really, I mean, for me, it's Edgecombe and Maxi are just so much fun. They're so dynamic. And yeah, it's just awesome to watch. I think with VJ, when he got drafted there, I was like, wow, like I really liked him as a prospect, but I was like, how much are they going to be able to empower him as a rookie just because they did sort of have that loaded backcourt? And right from the jump, I was watching because they were playing the Celtics, and it was just everything was running through VJ and Maxi, and it was really awesome to see, and it's obviously produced a ton of great results. With VJ specifically, is there anything that has like surprised you about his game that's a little bit further along than you might have expected, or just
A lot
everything?
of it, yeah. I mean, he was really good at Baylor. He was like a super impactful freshman. I like looking back on it, I can see where maybe I underrated him in a few ways. Like, obviously, we knew the defense was really high level. He was an okay shooter at Baylor. I think a lot of people were kind of billing him as like a bad shooter pre-draft, which I don't think was ever the case. He could always hit spot up threes, but like he didn't have much of a mid-range game at all. The pull-ups just weren't there. He wasn't a super advanced ball handler. You know, he's not Kyrie Irving, but he's getting to his spots and hitting those pull-up mid-range jumpers that he just was not shooting whatsoever at Baylor. He's hitting these like step back threes through contact and drawing 4-point plays. He's had a few of those. It's like that just wasn't really a thing at Baylor. It was more spot up, get downhill, cut back door, which he's doing all of that very well still. And he was always a good passer, but they're empowering him. They're putting him on the ball, like you said. He's like had the most touches, I think, through 3 or 4 games of a rookie in the past. I forget the exact time frame that I'm referencing, but they're feeding him a lot more than your average rookie, which is not what you would expect from a team with so much established talent. And he's just handling it super well. He's super poised. I'm just so beyond impressed with him. Truly had no. He was awesome in summer league. He was awesome in preseason. He had some of these big stat lines, and it was like, oh man, he looks really good. I still didn't expect him to come out and drop 34 on Boston on opening night. It just wasn't something that I was ready for mentally. So I'm just enjoying it as it comes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think you nailed it there. I mean, just like the pull-up shooting has just been truly absurd, and that wasn't something that was on my radar at all. And then the playmaking has been really advanced stuff, especially for a rookie guard. And yeah, it's just been awesome to watch. And I mean, the sky's truly the limit for him. And then you throw in Maxey, who's just having a monster season and has been truly one of the most unstoppable scorers. And this backcourt is so elite. And then you still have Jared McCain, who has yet to play this season. And I mean, I don't know about you, but personally, I think he'll fit in nicely just because of how gifted he is off the ball. And as a shooter, I don't see there being really any fit problems there. So, I mean, at the very least, the Sixers team's going to be very fun for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, like Maxey and VJ are averaging like 40 minutes a game right now, which obviously is not sustainable. I think once Jared's back, that will help take some of the load off for those guys. I've seen a lot of that, like how are McCain and Paul George going to fit in with this group? I understand. I understand some Paul George skepticism at this point in his career, but like they could very clearly A, use the defense, and B, just use another guy on the perimeter on the wing with some size who can shoot and dribble and do things. I think Watford being back helps there, but those guys clearly fit with what they're doing. I think the Joel of it all is where things are maybe a little bit like discordant, but like I think they're going to keep getting better if they're healthy. The energy's high. They seem really committed to putting in the effort every night. So we'll see. I definitely think they can be a playoff team if they're healthy. They can be a top 3 or 4 seed. Like they're going to be good if they are healthy and playing like this. So we'll see.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's the way to look at it, especially from your perspective as a fan, just cautiously optimistic and just enjoying the ride. Yeah, I mean, when you look at Paul George coming back, I think, like you said, fair to be a little bit skeptical, but I mean, he's fairly comfortable playing off the ball. The defense will help. Their forward depth isn't totally there, so I'm not too concerned. And
I
Jared, I
mean,
don't know
yeah,
how you can be concerned.
they've been starting Jabari Walker and Justin Edwards. Like I'm fairly confident in saying Paul George is better than those guys right now.
Yeah,
Still,
exactly.
you know.
And I feel like with Joel and even I mean Paul George to a lesser extent, I feel like they really understand at this point things are running through Maxi, and I think they're going to be okay with it because they don't really have a choice. But also, I mean, you look at Embiid, he's dealing with injuries still, and I think he's still recovering from that. So I think he sort of understands he's at like a different stage of his career at this point, and I think they're all bought in, and it's hard not to be when this team's been so successful. So I don't have any concerns on that end, which is kind of surprising because I am a little bit more skeptical on the Sixers typically. But I mean, yeah, this season's just been totally fun, even from an outsider's perspective. So, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I'm generally pretty skeptical of the Sixers myself, but it's been a blast. They have a pretty easy schedule coming up. I'm hoping they can just give themselves a nice little cushion here for when things maybe get choppier. But yeah, they're a fun team right now. I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we can wrap it up here. But yeah, before we officially close the show, I just want to give you a chance to plug your work to our listeners. Tell them where they can find you at.
Yeah, I am on Twitter at KlineNBA. I just started a TikTok account at Fansided Christopher. So if you want to see some videos on TikTok, you can follow me there. I'm the co-host of the Sixer Sense podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify. You can follow that on Twitter at Sixer Sense, and you can read my work at fansided.com. I'm writing about football, baseball, basketball, all that fun stuff. So yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do it again sometime, especially as
Yeah,
draft season truly heats up. Yeah, a lot of fun giving a little preview into the college basketball and NBA draft season. But yeah, thank you for coming on the show. It was a ton of fun having you on, man.
yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.